Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Praveen Kumar Shriram. I'm a Microsoft Certified Trainer, author, currently working as Solutions Architect in Azure. So far, we have completed around 7 videos on Azure Private Endpoint series. Today, we are going to work on the 8th video, which is Configure Private Endpoints for Azure SQL Server. Let's get started. In order to create private endpoints on SQL Server, obviously first we need to have a SQL Server and optionally a database as well. I already created a SQL Server and database using Bicep. Let me show you the Bicep. So I created a SQL Server module. This module is responsible for creating SQL Server and it returns the output, which is SQL Server ID and SQL Server name. And I also have a module called SQL Database. This module creates the SQL database. And both of these modules are invoked from main.bicep, as you can see here. One module for SQL Server and another module for SQL database. The inputs for all the both of these database is coming from main.bicep arrow. And if you want to know more details about how these two modules work, I already created a video in this series. Maybe you can check the appropriate videos in this playlist. And currently here, as you can see in line number 17, the password is hard coded, which is not a good practice. The good practice is to retrieve the passwords or secrets from keyword. You can also refer 19th video in this series to understand how to refer keywords secrets, both 19th and 20th. Both videos help you in understanding how to retrieve the secrets from keyword. All right. Now, our main goal here is to create private endpoints. We already have a generic module for creating private endpoints. In this video, we are going to leverage this module for creating private endpoint for SQL. In the next video, we will be using the same private endpoint module for creating a private endpoint for Azure App Service. Let's get started. All we need here is to invoke the private endpoint module for SQL Server. Now, before even we invoke the private endpoint module, we first need to create DNS zones. To be more specific, create private DNS zones. Once private DNS zones are available, we can create private endpoints. Private DNS zones are very important because these are the ones which will do the DNS resolution. That means the URL of the SQL server will be mapped to a private endpoint. That mapping is all stored in this step. So first we need to create private DNS zone. If you remember, I already mentioned that we already have private DNS zones. So I'm not going to create them again. All I'm going to do is I'm going to refer the existing private DNS zones. Let me navigate to Azure portal and show the DNS zones. All right. So now I have this DNS zones in a separate resource group, which is a good practice in terms of reusability. And if you're working in a very complex project, maybe this DNS zones will be in a separate subscription as well. But in my case, I have only one subscription, so I have the DNS zones right here. So this is the private DNS zone for SQL database. We are going to leverage this in our process of creating the private endpoints. Let's first get the reference of this private DNS zone. We already have a DNS zone module. We can just invoke that module. Choose the DNS module name, and here we need to provide all the information for SQL. So the first one is the DNS zone name. So I will just create a new parameter instead of hard coding it. Now, DNS zone name. Okay. The value should be coming from main.bicep equals to, this should be equal to the private DNS zone name. So let me copy it from here and put it here. The first parameter is good. Now the second one is resource group name. As I already said, the DNS zones could be in some other resource group or some other subscription as well. Now let me create a new parameter for this, similar to how we did for DNS zone name. Background, okay. And then I'll also add a new parameter here. Let me copy the resource group name, az-dns. Now we're done with second parameter as well. Now we need to pass VNet name as well as VNet ID. Let me copy the VNet name and let me copy the VNet ID. How do we get the VNet ID? We can get it from the module, because this VNet.bicep module returns us the VNet ID once it is created or updated. So all we need is get the module symbolic name dot outputs dot id. This is how we get the reference of DNS. So the module's responsibility here is to get the reference of DNS. Now once we have the DNS reference, we can start creating the private endpoints. We already have a private endpoint, so obviously all we need is we need to invoke the private endpoint module for our SQL server. Select the private endpoint module and it will ask for multiple parameters. The first one is the location. We already have a location parameter. Now we need to retrieve the DNS zone ID. This is the DNS zone module for SQL, which should return an output called DNS zone ID. This is good. And now this is the group ID. For SQL, there is only one group ID, which is SQL Server. And then we also need to provide a private endpoint name. Let's make it a parameter. So I'm going to create a new parameter for the same. And then obviously we need to create a new parameter for the new resource and provide a meaningful name. Maybe you would say private PE and then hyphen. Let's use the SQL Server name here. SQL Server name is this, for which denotes private endpoint for this particular SQL Server. Let's go back to main.bicep and then scroll down to the private endpoint. So here it is asking us to which resource you want to create a private endpoint. Obviously we know it is for SQL Server. Now let's grab the symbolic name for SQL Server. And then obviously it should return the ID of the SQL Server. Yeah, this is the one. And now subnet ID is a little complicated. We'll do that at the end. Now let's do the VNet ID. VNet module dot outputs dot VNet ID. So the VNet module returns the VNet ID. Now subnet ID. Subnet ID is not written by any module, but let's go and check the vnet.bicep. Yeah, and here we have the subnet ID. I have already added this. This vnet module is returning the subnet ID of the SQL server. You can use this here, or you can use it. You can write this line of code directly in main.bicep as well. It's up to us. So this is returning us the subnet ID of SQL server. So get module dot output dot subnet ID. So let's save all the files. Save this one as well. And everything looks good to me. Now let me execute this. Ensure that you are in the appropriate folder. This is our uh, deployment group create command. I added -c to see if everything is good by checking the preview. Let me hit enter. It will take some time. I'll pause the recording. I'll come back once it shows some information about the current deployment. All right. It shows a couple of resource creations which are in green. The first one is VNet link. Then it also creates a private endpoint, and then it also creates a private DNS zone group. Basically, this is where the mapping of the URL to IP address will be done, and there are a couple of changes which are in purple color. So everything looks good. I'm going to press 1. Again, it will take some time. I will pause the recording and come back once everything is completed. All right, there is an error. As you can see here, it says fail to perform write operation on resource of type virtual network links because the parent resource could not be found. As you can clearly see here, it is trying to identify a resource with this name. This is our private DNS zone. Inside the resource group, but our private DNS zones are not inside this resource. Our private DNS zones are in different resource group, which is being passed here. So in this, it is trying to fetch and refer the DNS zones, but it's giving an error while creating the virtual network because here we are referring just the name. We are not referring this resource anywhere inside this except the name, right? So now we need to make some code changes. Let's do that. Link to VNet, and of course we need to specify we don't need to specify anything here. And now here we can specify the parent. Parent is DNS2. We already discussed in our previous recording about private DNS zones and virtual networks. Now you see there is one more error. If I hover on this, it says because we are using scope, you have to create this inside another module. As we know, this is already in a module. However, the scope is a little different. So what we need to do is, let's remove the scope from here. What we can do is, we can specify the scope here. And here we can say resource group, and then we can pass the name of the resource group which is inside this lab. Now, what this does is whenever this module gets executed, it executes in the context of the resource group that is specified here, which is AZ-DNS. Now everything looks good. Let's give a try to execute the bicep code. Let me remove C and hit enter. It took some time. Let's now navigate to Azure Management Portal to see the changes. Let me click on resource group and click on overview. Now, as you can see here, we have private endpoint created, and then we also have a network interface card created. If you remember, I mentioned we don't have to write extra code for creating network interface card. It will be automatically created along with private endpoints. Let me click on private endpoints and click on DNS configuration. Now here you can see the private IP address is assigned to network interface card, and this network interface card is assigned to private endpoint. What is also done is the private IP address is mapped um, to this, which is part of this private DNS zone. Now, here in this private DNS zone, there are two things. The first one is virtual network links. A new network link got added for us, which is this. So any traffic within this virtual network is trying to reach out our SQL server. This private DNS zone will take care of handling the DNS. Now, all the information about DNS is within these record sets. Now, it looks at this server name dot private link dot database dot windows dot net. If it sees that traffic, then that particular DNS in request will be diverted or routed to this particular private IP address. Now, because this private IP address is assigned to our private endpoint, which is actually linked to our SQL server, so the traffic will all be routed to this specific SQL server. Now, the SQL server networking, the public access is disabled, and then our private endpoint is associated with this SQL server. So this is how all the linkings are done, and from now onwards, if someone tries to access SQL server from public internet, it will all be denied. Only private traffic is allowed from within that virtual network that we have associated with. That's it for this video. In the upcoming video, we are going to do the same thing for an app service. I will see you in the next video. If you have any feedback on this video, please feel free to share your feedback in the comment section. Till then, take care. Bye bye. Jai Hind.